Arrived.
Conversations. Oh no, that's the other podcast. LOL till the end. Podcast episode.
Yeah, that
6.
actually works. Till the end.
Phantom Pastor. That's an inside joke that we don't need to divulge here.
Nope.
So welcome everybody.
Episode number 6.
Episode number 6.
Till the end podcast.
Till the end podcast. Good to be here.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, we last time Jonathan and I did a podcast, just the two of us. We were a couple days into our Mexico trip in Cancun. We are now
Lifetimes ago.
Lifetimes ago. We're now reporting live from a recorded version. But it was recorded live here in Playa del Carmen, which has been a pretty eye-opening experience because literally a couple weeks ago we had no real idea of what this place was at all. We had come and the place we wanted to spend a lot of time was Tulum, and we did spend time there. We're gonna go there for New Year's, and it was a lot of fun. However, we on the way between Cancun and Tulum, we came to Playa del Carmen thinking it was just going to be this little beach town, a couple thousand people, nothing exciting. And we got here.
We were totally wrong.
And we were totally wrong. It's not even that we didn't even have an idea that we were wrong about. We just didn't even have, it wasn't even on the purview. It wasn't even on the radar.
Existed.
Yeah.
A couple months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, in my mind, I thought, we're going to spend the majority of this trip in Tulum because it's going to be really fun.
Yep.
We've heard so many things about Tulum, and then when we left Playa to go to, for me personally, when we left Playa to go to Tulum, I was just like being called back to Playa del Carmen, and I was like, I want to go back. So
yeah, so everything's centralized. There's just over 150,000 people here, and everything's kind of centralized around the beach because Playa in Spanish is beach, so it's literally Beach del Carmen, and there's a massive expat community here. The amount of, and a good mix of traveling people. So there's a lot of expat people that actually are living here indefinitely. There's some expat people that, like us, figured out it's a nice spot and they decided they're going to live here for 1 to 3 to 6 months, and they're doing that. And then there's also the run-in-the-mill traveler types that are just running through, along with obviously the locals as well. So the mix and the culture here is just insane, and it's so affordable.
Yeah.
It's so affordable. Coming from North America and Canada and having relatively good jobs, and then coming here, it's very, very affordable, and it's been amazing.
Yeah, I just finished eating maybe my 12th full chicken since I've been in Playa del Carmen.
Yeah, you can buy full chickens cooked with rice, with sauces, all that kind of stuff, ready to go, delicious. It's $5 USD, and it's been incredible so far. And I think one of the most exciting things about being here right now is that we're currently in an Airbnb with our friend Mohsen, who was on the last podcast and will be on the next one. And we had bounced around a little bit between here and Tulum, and then now we're back, and we booked it out for 3 weeks. So instead of being on the move, we've really been able to settle in, and this place feels like home now. And one of the markers of that for me is that we've had days where we didn't really do anything. You think if you're on a travel and vacation, you got to pack your schedule full every second of every day, making sure you make the most of it. But we're essentially living here. We're not just traveling here. So we have days where we just not do a whole lot, and it's just it's amazing from that standpoint.
Yeah, and it makes the excursions that we do really stand out as spectacular. Most and I were on the way to walk and get chicken like we've done mostly every day since we've been living here. And on the way back, we were just talking about how like the snorkeling excursion that we're going to do tomorrow is going to really stand out on the backdrop of, living a typical life, of the things and the routines and the rituals that I want to have on a day-to-day basis. And now we're going to shake things up and go snorkeling.
Yeah, it's going to be sweet. And another thing about kind of the interesting situation we've found ourselves in, unique, you could call it, is we're not working. And
in the traditional sense.
We're not working in terms of being tied or obligated towards any sort of time dedication to a job or something like that, where every day is basically like a Saturday right now. And that's kind of been one of the running jokes for the three of us here. And it's really, really interesting because I just read, I'm sure I mentioned before, but I read a book by H.G. Wells on the history of the world. And if you look at the history of all humanity and people, the vast majority of everybody's time throughout history has been working, school, taking care of the family, like actively obligations, responsibilities, and these kind of things. And we've essentially put ourselves in a way into a type of position where we're outside of the money game, where we're not waking up and dedicating the best hours of our life or the best days, time, or energy, all that kind of stuff to a specific goal that isn't necessarily what we want to be doing. So it's I mean, if you
I think that's an important caveat when you say necessary that we want to be doing, because maybe not working from a traditional sense, but when I wake up in the morning, I see Mohsen sitting with his laptop doing all of the productive habits that he wants to keep up, learning about the things in the world that he wants to learn about. But what you're saying is, like, rather than being tied to working for a company or knowing that I have a deadline that this needs to be done by when, it's instead I decide the schedule, I dictate my calendar, I choose what I want to learn, when I want to learn it, or I choose who I want to hang out with, when I want to hang out with them. It's been transformational.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's so exciting, because someone listening, it might come off as braggadocious or like, look at us, we're doing so well. But I think people would be surprised at how inexpensive doing something really like this is. I mean, our living expenses unquestionably are less than the average person's just rent alone.
Dropped a lot.
In Toronto, let alone all the other expenses that, the living expenses that go along with living in a Toronto or a major North American city. And it's been really eye-opening, because as we mentioned, we didn't even know about Playa del Carmen. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of different personal development organizations talk about all knowledge. If you represent it on like a pie chart, so a big circle, there's the part that you know, and then that you know, and then there's the part that you know that you don't know, and then there's this giant, the vast majority of all knowledge and things that are to be known that you don't even know, or we don't even know that we don't know. And so we came to this place that we didn't even know it existed. It is far surpassed our wildest expectations for what it could have been. And then what it really tells me is as great as it is here and how exciting that is, what else aren't we aware of that life and consciousness has to offer that we don't even know that we don't know? Because most people don't even know what this place is, let alone how affordable and how accessible it is for so many people if they wanted to do something like this.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you mentioned like not trying to come off braggadocious. And if we were doing this a couple years ago, it maybe would have felt that way. Yeah. But in the world that we live in today with work from home, you can absolutely do this if you wanted to. We're choosing,
and you probably save money.
Yeah, you definitely would save money. And we're choosing to not work, but we could totally be working here. Yeah. I've met when Iain mentioned that there was a giant expat community. If you go into cafes in the morning and decide to, instead of read at home or read at the beach, and you decide to go to a cafe, 80% of the people that I've met there have been English speaking, working for a company, but getting their work done from this cafe.
Yeah.
They spend $1 on coffee and then they get to hang out and work all day.
Yeah. So it's been amazing. And it's nice though, not even having to do that work right now, although we could do it, anyone really could do that and do something like this if they wanted to. But it's been really nice to just wake up, get well rested, and then do things that we really are interested in, as opposed to having the remains and the scraps of the time and energy that we'd have left after dedicating to a job, and being able to use that directly towards what we want to do. So we've been working out and eating healthy. I've been doing a lot of reading. We've been listening and doing a lot of different personal development stuff, and it's been amazing so far.
You made a great point, because I've got this list of things that I want to talk about for this podcast. One of them that's not on here, but you brought up, I think is a phenomenal idea for us to explore, is the idea of relaxation. Because every time I make a video for Instagram, which is something that I've done for years, it has nothing to do with us being on this trip, all of the people that I know that always watch my videos say, man, you just look so relaxed.
Yeah.
And we've been taking the time to relax. Yeah. And the more that we research guys like Joe Dispenza and Jose Silva and Sam Harris, it's like even the guy who wrote Obstacle is the Way, Ryan Holiday, where his newest book's about stillness.
Yeah, stillness is the key.
Stillness is the key is like these themes and this idea of creating space for relaxation, creating space for quieting the monkey mind keeps coming up in my life, and I'm really thrilled to be in a position where I can actually act on these and not feel obligated to do so much, but instead to just take a second to take a breath, take a second to relax. And I'll keep going if you don't mind. Yeah, sure. There's a workout program I follow called Happy Body, and the book's subtitle is The Science of Exercise, Nutrition, and Relaxation. And I always thought that was interesting because I had never seen that incorporated to an exercise program before. But it's essentially like if you do all this work with the exercise and you do all this work with the nutrition, but you don't take the time to get from being in stress and fight and flight to adjusting your nervous system from parasympathetic to sympathetic, where you can just fully relax, and a lot of the progress is lost.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to just do nothing sometimes. Just do nothing and not have any type of project that what you're working towards, and actually decompress. I think that's why, I mean, it's banal at this point. It's probably repetitive. Every person that you would hear talk about wellness, etc., talks about meditation. But one of the things that really sold it for us, and I remember you bringing it up, and it made a lot of sense as to, because obviously you hear you should meditate, these kind of things. And then eventually you got to a point where you're like, every person publicly that I admire recommends virtually nothing higher than meditation. So at this point, if I'm not going to listen to that, why am I listening to them?
Yeah. It's not just successful people, but it's all the ones that I admire.
All of them. It's not every successful person, but it's all the people that we want to resemble and be like.
Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and Sam Harris and
Alan Watts,
Joe Dispenza and Alan Watts,
all of them. Ryan Holiday, every single one. So if you were waiting for the universe to tell you, if you were waiting for the universe to give you a reason and tell you to meditate and give you that nudge, here it is. LOL.
Hola. That being said, you mentioned sometimes it's okay to do nothing, and I agree with that. And sitting down and doing the meditation is active.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like I'm doing nothing, because when I think, but this is just maybe the way that I hold nothing is like I'm gonna take my laptop and I'm gonna put Netflix on and I'm gonna zombie out, and I think that's okay, but it's totally not the same thing, in my opinion.
No, it's definitely not the same thing. Are you done? Are you still listening to music sometimes, all the time, or do you still do?
I don't listen to music anymore when I meditate. No.
Hey, you standardize before you optimize.
Yeah.
You got the habit in place,
True.
and then you optimized it from there. So that's well done.
Yeah, I did Sam Harris's Waking Up app for a couple months, and then recently Mohsen, like we mentioned, we did the podcast with him last episode. We're gonna do the next one with him. He came here and we were talking about some things that I could do to continue to help heal my body. And one of those things is relaxation. And he mentioned a guy named Jose Silva, very in alignment with what Joe Dispenza talks about.
Yeah.
But it's about like getting from a place where you're literally learning to attune your brain waves from beta waves to alpha waves, and then you can go deeper into theta and gamma. I haven't gotten there yet. But right now the way the meditation works is I'm literally anchoring myself in the exercise that Jose Silva shows, and getting into deep relaxation really quickly, like within minutes.
That's so alpha, bro. Yeah, man. So it's been a wild, amazing couple weeks here. Going to the beach. I am naturally paler than Casper, so I've been able to get.
You look good, dude.
Mildly less paler than Casper, which is easier when I'm wearing a white shirt, so it's a contrast.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, so earlier this week we celebrated a big birthday. Got this new pashmina from Jonathan. You can't see, and looks good, thanks, man. I got a pineapple shirt from Mohsen, and we unlike Canada and North America right now, in Mexico, the general opinion of the people when it comes to COVID is that if I die, I die. It just is what it is.
That being said, I was talking to my Spanish teacher yesterday because I was saying, wouldn't it be cool if I went to Mexico City? And she's like, you don't want to go to Mexico City. He said it's very much like what it's like in Canada. After 5
in
p.m.,
terms of restrictions?
they've got 23 million people though in Mexico City.
Yeah, that's a different thing. We got
Totally
150,000 people.
In Playa, they're cool. She's like, in Playa, they're cool.
It is open here. Yeah. So we actually, on my birthday, we went.
So fun.
We went out dancing. Interesting friend of ours, good friend Mark Nguyen, who was on my podcast. So I got to release that. He made a PowerPoint presentation for the pre-drink party celebration before going out dancing.
Good feels.
Which is an interesting guy, and that's definitely an interesting type gift to give.
Very thoughtful.
Very thoughtful. And then we went out dancing. So we go out. And there's only a couple people at this club, and we walk in, we have our group of people, and then we made this dance floor.
We just went in there and went all in.
And they started playing like hip hop and old school, and then all of a sudden they start throwing on EDM.
Cranked it
and
up.
The people just started flooding in.
From the streets, they found
My throat doesn't even hurt, I feel fine. And we were out there just absolutely dancing.
I got some great videos.
And I think there's something. I missed a good dance floor.
Seriously. And
when you do whoever you are, if you haven't been on a dance floor in a while, that day will come again, despite what it may seem, and it's very, very cathartic. There's a term called collective effervescence, where everyone in their experience of consciousness, you feel some sort of sense of individuality. That there's the world, and then there's you. And your kind of sense of yourself is some sort of feeling that contains in the body, and most people kind of feel like it contains somewhere
behind
the eyes in the head. And a collective effervescence is essentially when a group of people, a collective, come together and engage in the same activity. It's usually a combination of like the mental and focus, while at the same time having the body engagement as well. And then as the late great Alan Watts talked about, he said when humans have free time, typically what they do is they get together and they do something rhythmic. So that really is the dance floor, and I'm sure you've experienced it. We've been on a dance floor, and everyone, and the music is right. They say a good DJ plays the music you want to hear. A great DJ plays the music that you didn't know you needed to hear.
Yeah,
and
we got into a groove.
We got into a groove, and the whole place was just going bananas.
So sick.
And it was so fun.
So fun.
And I'm obviously not a medical doctor, but I think that's good for your health. I think that's good for your health, and I think
smiling, jumping up and down,
the oxytocin, hugging your friends, dancing, all that kind of stuff,
spinning people
around. So yeah, that was amazing.
Super
fun.
I'm glad we did that.
Yeah, it was the birthday that if you told me back in March that I would have spent my birthday in Mexico beach town with 3 of my best friends and other groups of people dancing away, I just wouldn't even know what to react. It wouldn't have made any sense at all. And it just turned out to just such an amazing time, and it was quite the year. What a year! The last 12, like obviously 2020, but the whole last 12 months in general. For me, I think.
Yeah, that's one of my questions.
Yeah, I think it's been probably the biggest year of growth in my life.
Yeah.
In recent memory, anyway.
Yeah, I was thinking about because we did so many fun things.
We did so many fun things,
and it's so counter culture and counter narrative
in terms of what everyone else has been doing this year. And we traveled in the last 12 months. We traveled more than any single year of our entire lives.
I've never traveled this much.
We traveled so much. By the end of 2020, we'll have traveled 3+ months out of the year.
Yeah. And next year it's going to be
12
months.
Will be 12 months.
It'll be tough to beat 2021.
Yeah, it'll be hard to beat that.
That being said, I had a couple questions about some of the biggest lessons you took away from this year, but I wanted to start off, maybe let that marinate for a second. What was one of your favorite memories? Because obviously we've been here in Mexico. We went and did that road trip in BC. You spent your summer reading in the backyard at 2179 Dundas Street West, back in Toronto. Is anything particular throughout that entire time horizon? If you looked at a video on your phone or a picture on your phone of something like.
Well, there's definitely a lot. There's definitely a lot. Just to pick one out of the ether and not get too burdened with it being the number one if a gun to my head. Mosin, who is here with us. Jonathan, him and I, we woke up really early in the morning when we were in Calgary. We were in, not in Calgary. We were in Banff, Alberta, and we went to Lake Louise. And we all took some LSD acid at around about 8 in the morning or so. And then we did this 12-hour, and you can see it on our Instagram with the post. We did this 12-hour day hike, essentially, where we walked all the way to the top of the mountains. We were amidst the Rocky Mountains. And I remember just having such a great time. We were playing music, laughing, dancing, just silly, having fun. And then there was even some horses there, and I got to feed a horse a carrot on acid. That was fun. And then I just remember sitting there and looking at the mountains and looking at the clouds in the sky and just literally just tearing up at the absolute majesty and beauty of it all. And essentially what happened is that I was able to peek behind the curtain of our regular consciousness. Consciousness as we know it is restricted consciousness. We're only aware of this little of our sensory organs of our body and these eyes and the lights and all the filters of that. And the full consciousness, which can't be fully comprehended in this kind of sense, it's like it's like you get to peek behind the curtain. But it seems as though part of the rules of peeking behind the curtain is that what you see when you look behind the curtain can't be seen or explicitly in adequate language be described again once the curtain is closed. And then I think the faith, like a real faith comes in, is that the absolute presence that I felt in that moment I was looking at the clouds, and it's really, just this feeling of harmony, like an absolute presence and just a non-duality of everything being completely connected and the way it needs to be. And that feeling that I oscillated back and forth between being able to comprehend what I saw behind the curtain, and then when the curtain was closed, again, not being able to see it. And then what I'm just left with once the curtain is closed and it's going back and forth and I'm staring up at these giant mountains beyond comprehension. And it's just this absolute awe and wonder of just the absolute beauty of it all. Because really what it felt like was looking at myself, and not myself as in Iain, but like my true self and who we actually are. And it was extremely profound.
Yeah, it sounds like borderline mystical.
Yeah, it by definition, it was definitely, unquestionably a mystical experience. And the way I've kind of described like a similar feeling of that is, you might be familiar with The Matrix. And there's the old red pill. There's the red pill. There's the red pill and the blue pill. Yeah. And if you take the blue pill, you stay asleep within the Matrix, and if you take the red pill, you wake up and you see what's actually going on. Now, in the Matrix, if you take the red pill, you're out of it, and you realize that you're hooked up and you're being exploited by some other organism, and the Matrix is just to keep you there so they can like harvest you or whatever. I think in real life, again, for what I'm trying to describe here is what's behind the curtain. And remember, the rules of behind the curtain is that there's no actual words, because words are just symbols, but don't mistake symbols for that in which they are symbolizing. So the curtain's now closed again. And I think, in some conviction, I don't know if it's true, who knows, but I'm convinced that we are red pill beings convincing ourselves of living in the Matrix and the blue pill, except this Matrix, this blue pill is not some exploitation of you for something else. It is an experience that you just want to have.
Deliberate, yeah.
So it's the old Alan Watts quote where he basically said, people get really upset when life is difficult and there's frustrations and there's agitations and there's bad things and it's difficult and all these kind of things. And he said, life is kind of like this. If you could go to bed tonight and dream any dream you could possibly want, any pleasure, and you could and you could have that extended for any amount of time, so 75 years or lifetimes, whatever you want. You would naturally start having the most fantastical dreams, of the most amazing, you are godlike, you are doing all these amazing, incredible, you're flying and you're doing all these wild things. And then after a couple nights of 75 years of that, or as long as you'd like, as many lifetimes as you'd like.
Infinite if you want.
Infinite if you want. You would eventually get to the point where you're like, I'm sick of playing God. And I want something to happen to me that I can't predict. I want to be surprised. So you would set up these scenarios where it'd be difficult and more difficult, and random things would happen, and you'd get out and you're like, that was a close shave, and you just made it out. And then you'd continue to do further and further out gambles at what you could dream. And eventually you would dream where you are now. Because what you're experiencing right now is within the infinite realm of possibilities. And I think something I've kind of come to recently is faith in a monotheistic or anything like that. Faith is to be present and trust that there's all the infinite consciousness and you're consciously aware of what you're experiencing. And then faith is to be present in that experience and trust that there's some sort of reason for that. And that reason can be up to you. And that's where you get to shape your context. You get to shape your lens. You get to decide if your life is a tragedy or a comedy or an adventure or a drag, anything that you want. And that's completely up to you and within your power.
Super empowering.
Yeah.
If you could choose any context, any way at looking at the world,
that's a good one.
That's a pretty
good one.
That's a pretty damn good one.
If
I could dream any dream, this is the one that I would dream. That's a pretty fucking empowering context,
that's
bro.
Like
literally, it would be us sitting here on the microphone
and
with the fixed thing.
And you'd be where you are washing dishes, listening to these idiots in another country doing our thing out here. Because, I mean,
that's beautiful.
From a sense of us being restricted consciousness, there's cheesy sayings like you are your imperfections, all those kind of things, and you are. Your imperfections are literally what define you. If perfection of consciousness and power is some giant rectangular square block of clay, and that's perfection, well, you're not that. Whatever you are is some weird little claw shape, chipped away, all and inconvenient and all weird and all those kind of things. And your imperfections are literally what makes you.
Yeah, it reminds me of it's funny because some of these ideas are said in different ways, which is why I think it's really useful to get this almost mastermind effect of personal development.
Yes.
Where we read The Alchemist this summer on that road trip. We also listened to Busting Loose in the Money Game at the same time, and that was really powerful. And one of the things, I know you got that on your watch there, is the Maktub idea. Maktub?
Yeah, Maktub.
Maktub, which is it's already written, right? It's all written.
Arabic word.
So it feels like however you show up right now was written on purpose. Mm-hmm. Right? You can trust that. You said the word faith. You can have the faith to know that all the imperfections were designed perfectly for you to be where you are right now, living the life that you live right now. And I think that's empowering, because instead of now resisting my life and resisting where I've showed up, I can just be in the present moment.
Yeah. And one of the exciting things about that is we get so stuck in certain things that have happened in our past that we think are unreconcilable. And every single moment is an opportunity for redemption and transcendence of any type of negativity that you ever experienced in your past. Because once you have something really good, really moving and amazing experience with friends or family, or you've accomplished something, and you feel the real satisfaction of that. If you really connect to the fact that everything in your entire life, everything in history led to this moment, and that moment happening right then, and that to remove that mistake you made when you were 16 would be to nullify the whole thing. And actually, those things are what actually gives you the parameters and the context for the life that you're living now. And one of the things, somewhat of a paraphrase, I don't know if I had the idea completely right, but Dr. Joe Dispenza, who's like I'm not exactly sure.
It's a good master, and that's where I was going next.
Yeah. So
I'm glad you're going there.
Yeah, he has incredible stuff around
good.
meditation. I've talked about it
Powerful.
before. He has a book called Break the Habit of Being Yourself and how you can essentially change.
Becoming supernatural.
Yeah, yeah. And but one of the things he talked about, there's a certain exercise that he referred to that made a lot of sense to me. And he said, once you really understand that the time doesn't exist, it's not some sort of lined, arrowed, chronological order of things, and all things are really happening now, and everything that's ever happened is happening now, that a useful exercise in terms of gratitude and presence is to hold in your mind a certain experience from your past, specifically negative, when you were very in a down. Life is ups and downs, and this is one of your downs. And my extrapolation from that is pick a time in your life when you were down, but don't just think about the phase of your life. It wasn't like when I was 19. I want you to think of a specific time, and I want you to think of like you sitting in your bed, or you showering and overthinking, or you going for a walk to the store. Like hold that into your brain and wish your younger self well. Really, really wish, and with intention, power to that. And I think there's just something about that when it hit for me, and I've talked to a couple friends about it. There's something about that goes beyond our common sense and logic. There's something about that just resonates, that you're just going back and you're wishing yourself and you're giving yourself power to a time when you felt hopeless. And then part of that is the faith. Is if you make that a recurring, if you decide to make that a recurring theme in your life, then you know that there's an infinite amount of you in the future wishing you well and giving you power and looking after you now.
Wow. That's super powerful.
And here's the thing, I don't fucking know if that's true. I'm not trying to say there's some sort
Does
of
it feel good though?
It feels good.
There you go. It feels good.
It feels good to think about.
Right. And I like that, because we were talking about this mystical experience when we were hiking up the mountain in the Rocky Mountains, and this was like substance generated in a way, right? Where we took a substance that helped get us there. But Joe Dispenza is talking about how you have all of those control mechanisms in your power. You can choose to make yourself feel that way.
Yeah.
And that's really empowering, because like no matter what's happening in your life right now, there are tools available to you to change that.
Yeah. So I think this is a good time. You were going to ask me something along the lines of...
One last question for you, Mr. Gabriel.
All right, I am ready.
All right, okay. What's the biggest lesson, man? What's the biggest lesson? What was... You said that between 24 and 25, it was one of the most spiritually from a personal development perspective, one of the most enlightening experiences of your life, broadening of your perspectives. What's one of the biggest takeaways? And obviously, it doesn't have to be the number one, but what was something that was really empowering for you that you're using today that maybe I can use, or that somebody that's listening can use as well?
Yeah. This entire year has been, the word spiritual has so much negative connotation and woo-woo baggage and all those kind of things. But in terms of really connecting with myself, I don't know, the best words that communicate it the best in terms of spiritual, all those kind of things. But I could say it was an awakening, a spiritually awakening year. I laid the groundwork with reading the right books. And
a lot of books, man.
A lot. I don't know, dozens. I don't know how many books I read, but a lot of meditation. Definitely some substance infused assistance. But the number one thing I learned this year was that there's nothing external that is going to give you or sustain lasting joy or satisfaction. There's nothing that anyone else outside of you, that not your family, not your kids, not your friends, not your coworkers, not your boss, not some spouse, not some job. There's nothing outside of you that is going to give you the lasting joy that you seek. And if only through being beaten into submission of that by, I've pretty much had all the external pleasures in this world that you could pack into a quarter century, and none of them are lasting. None of them. But what is lasting is your true self and your internal life. So whatever that through the meditation, through the gratitude and the contemplation, you can begin the workings of cultivating an inner space, a peace, a tranquility that I'll bet maybe not bulletproof, that you'll never have a bad day, you're not going to have bad things that are going to affect you, but you're going to be able to cultivate an inner peace that is going to allow you to weather virtually every storm in life. And you're going to be able to cultivate more energy and joy and gratitude and peace and love and happiness and everything that you want to feel. Because I think a lot of the things we've talked about here have been, today anyway, have been a lot of the Eastern philosophy, and as much as I love that, I don't exclusively like that. I like lots of forms, and the other big school of philosophy that we like is Stoic philosophy. Mm-hmm. And Marcus Aurelius said something along the lines of, whatever you're seeking to feel or achieve by circuitous route, you can feel right now if you allow yourself to. And I think one of the things we talked about this on an early episode, but one of the things I noticed with COVID was you were able to finally stay home on a Saturday night and not go out, while also not having FOMO, not having the fear of missing out, because everyone's at home. And then I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And then I realized I was the generator of the fear of missing out. And I'm also the generator of the contentness of staying in on the Saturday night. We have control over the context and the lens through which we see the world. Mm. And we can create an empowering one that serves us, that isn't necessary. It isn't some delusional fantasy that doesn't allow you to function or interact or communicate with people in the world. But you can look at, you can choose any moment to choose your context and the story that you're living in. And I think the beauty of that is you have, as cheesy it is, the power is within you to feel how you want to feel, and you can cultivate that and lasting. And it isn't some sort of external thing that you need to keep chasing, and then you get it, but then you need more of it to sustain it, or you need more of it. It's not some sort of addiction. It's a centering, a grounding presence and power, a serenity that you can really cultivate. And I think, as much as I'm explaining this now, I don't have it all figured out. I don't have it mastered by any scope of the imagination. But I know that it's possible now. And I know what I'm kind of working for. And then, ironically enough, if you take care of your internal world, your internal life, your internal peace, and you're not dead set on needing anything external, ironically enough, the external things just fall into place because you don't need them. And when you don't need them, you're able to go after them without the fear of failure. Mm-hmm. And you're able to be present. And the fear of failure is what creates the paralysis often of the activity towards things that we want to do. And when you know that nothing external is going to give or take away from that feeling that you have, then you can go and do those things and do them in a peaceful, pleasant way, and not in this type of gasping for air that it just must be accomplished or you're not going to be happy, because you know that no matter what, you're going to be happy. No matter what, you're going to have peace. Not always. Some things are going to happen. But you can choose, if you want to have the majority of your time be in a state of peace and, as you said, serenity.
Yeah. I think a practical way that you can apply this to your life if you're open-minded to it is one of the things that I did on my phone was set up a reminder for myself a couple times a day that just says, what's your context right now?
Yeah.
And for those of you that are wondering what context is, basically just the lens in which you're looking at the world. Yeah. So as an example, one of the contexts that I can hold is playing to win versus playing to not lose. Right, and that's just like one of the ways that I could looking at the world is playing to win versus playing not to lose. And it sounds like what you're saying is like, if I'm coming from the internal first, and how am I looking at the world? Do I look at it from like a fear of missing out perspective, or generating that feeling of not missing out on anything? I've been practically applying that to my life by setting up reminders to ask myself, what's my context right now? Is it the default of just the hustle and bustle of the day, feeling like I needed busyness, need to take care of all these things, or am I coming from a place of being centered, of being calm, being relaxed, being still, and allowing everything to fall into place?
Yeah, I think there's a world apart between playing to win and playing not to lose. One is playing to win and being abundant and actually having a focus, and one is out of scarcity and fear. I mean, it literally just popped into my head, but it's like, if you think that the external thing is going to make you happy or make you miserable if you fail, then it's the equivalent of you climbing a tall tree and there's something that you want at the end of a branch. And if you believe that everything's external, then you're not really going to go for it. You're just trying not to fall, and you're scared because if I fall, then I'm going to lose all these kind of things. But if your peace, if that internally cultivated joy and happiness that you have, if you have that, that's your safety net under the branch, and then you can play to win. And when you can play to win with no fear of failure, because if you lose, you don't lose your happiness and your peace. That's there anyway. And then when you're not afraid of falling, that's when you actually go for it.
That's beautiful, and I think that's the right way to end this, because the number one thing that I learned from Gabriel, I said two things because I was thinking about what'd you learn, and I was thinking of what did I learn from you, because we spent so much goddamn time together this year, and that's exactly that idea, is not being afraid to fail. I wrote two things, and the first one was, don't be afraid to make mistakes, because when you come from a place of and this shows up practically, when I observe you as being willing to crack jokes that don't work, or trying raps that may not work out in settings that are interesting settings to do a rap, but just not having the fear of making mistakes, knowing first of all, because it doesn't matter if I do. It doesn't matter if I do. It's not going to change my life in any drastic way. But now, here's the second thing I learned, is repeat successful actions. When you aren't afraid of making mistakes, you may make a lot of mistakes, but you'll also find a lot of things that work really well. Yeah. And the reason I bring this up is because one of the things that gets me kind of emotionally charged sometimes, and I have to remember, why is that for myself that I feel this way, is when I hear you tell a joke that I've heard you tell 20 times as an example. He's not always telling the same joke, but because I spend so much time with him, I hear him say it in different places, and my ego is like, fuck, when's he gonna shut up about this joke? But the people that are hearing it for the first time, it's the first time they're hearing it, so they've never heard it before. So for me, it's like, he's said this one before. But it's just not being afraid to make mistakes, so that you have enough repetitions in whatever it is you're trying to do that you find some things that work, and then you fucking keep trying the successful actions. And that's one of the biggest things that I learned from you, is you try a lot, and you throw a lot against the wall, you see what sticks, and then you milk the shit out of what sticks. You milk the shit out of
that sticky, soapy wad of paper against the bathroom wall.
So thanks for teaching me that, man.
You got it, bro.
Appreciate it, dude.
Learned a lot from you as well, but we'll keep a thing or two up there.